Fuzz and I frequently speak on university campuses where we present our testable creation model, then we invite science professors on the campus to critique it and open up for discussion. As you can see with this slide here, we're all about presenting new reasons to believe, predominantly from the book of nature to establish that Christ is Creator, Lord, and Savior. You can engage Fuzz and me simply by texting either Hugh to 31996 or Fuzz to 31996. That's your portal to several book chapters and articles and much more that we're giving away for free. But as advertised tonight, we're going to talk about the Big Five, and specifically the 5 best scientific evidences to show STEM people that God exists. And you say, who on earth are these STEM people? They're people that are in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine. That's kind of our target mission field. And we're not just talking about the professionals in those areas, but people who are influenced by them, work for them. And we have estimated that about 1/3 of the entire US adult population are either trained in the STEM careers or they're influenced by people that have been trained in the STEM disciplines. And they represent the largest unreached people group here in the United States, and for that matter, in most other countries. Now, what's interesting about these STEM people, they typically are not regularly attending church. They have heard about the Bible, but they've never really read the Bible, and they typically don't have a lot of close Christian friends. Consequently, we have to use a different approach to reach them. And evangelism here in the United States has been sharing with people how they can come into a relationship with God, but really many of these STEM people need assurance that this God even exists. As it says in Hebrews 11:6, anyone who comes to God must believe that he exists, and he rewards those who earnestly seek him. And traditionally, evangelism here in the United States has assumed that every American believes this. That's no longer the case, and especially not the case for people that are in the STEM careers or influenced by them. These individuals need evidence from the book of nature that there really is a God, not only a God, but a God who cares for human beings. There are also people who not only need scientific evidence, they need opportunities to discuss and dialogue and debate the evidence. That's one reason in arranging to come here this weekend, we've asked that there be lots of time for questions, dialogue, and discussion. And we're hoping when you ask questions, it'll be the hardball questions, not the softball questions. And you say, well, where did you get these Big 5 scientific evidences from? We got them from our engagement with scientists, engineers, technologists who were atheistic but have become Christians. And in interviewing them, we found that there are 5 significant scientific evidences that consistently have been the significant factor, and they're moving from a non-theistic worldview perspective to a Christian worldview perspective. And we refer to these as the Big 5. And that, namely, that the origin of the universe. I mean, I was raised and educated in Canada. I didn't meet Christians till I was 27 years of age. But for me, it was the origin of the universe. Recognizing that when we look at the universe, it tells us there must be a beginning. If there's a beginning, there must be a beginner. Then the fine-tuning of the universe that makes possible the existence of human beings, and in particular, makes possible our redemption from sin and evil. And then, I know you probably have heard this. How many of you have heard this from people in the STEM careers, that science contradicts Genesis? Okay? Very common. All right. And I found that that's really critical for people in the STEM careers, that they understand that rather than science contradicting Genesis, it actually proves and establishes Genesis and therefore the rest of the Bible. To put it another way, if you can't get the skeptic past the first page of the Bible, you're probably not going to get them to the Gospel of John. And it's the first page of the Bible that raises the most scientific objections. Then the origin of life, and then human exceptionalism. Fuzz is going to talk about briefly the origin of life and human exception. What we're doing tonight, we're covering these big five very quickly, and the rest of the weekend we're going to unpack it for you in a little more detail, where the cookies will be on the bottom shelf. But forgive us for tonight. We're going to be blasting through this just to kind of give you a survey of what you can expect for the rest of the weekend. So, origin of the universe. Now, I started studying astronomy when I was 7 years of age in a serious way, but when I got to be 16, I realized that of all the explanations for the origin and history of the universe, the evidence was supporting Big Bang. And if there's a Big Bang, there's a beginning, there's a beginning, there's a beginner. What has happened in the past several years is that my peers in astrophysics have developed over 30 space-time theorems. And they all are slightly different, but the one that's having the greatest impact on my peers is this one by Arvin Borde, Alexander Vilenkin, and Alan Guth, that states that any universe that expands, and here's what's significant, only a universe that expands permits the existence of physical life. Any universe that expands on average has a space-time beginning, which implies there must be a causal agent outside of space and time who creates space-time, matter, and energy. Now, I'm going to give you a quote from Alexander Vilenkin. He's not a theist, but he wrote a book. He's one of the three authors. He wrote a book about 2 years afterwards where he said this in the book, quote, "With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning." And you say, what is that problem? The proof of a space-time beginning implies a causal agent beyond space and time who creates a universe of space-time, matter, and energy. Now, before I began to study the Christian faith, I studied Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Baha'i, a lot of the other religions. But what I noticed was the difference. In Christianity, it talks about a God who creates independent of time. In the Eastern religions, it's God's creating within time that eternally exists. So this is actually establishing the God of the Bible. In other words, there's now a consensus amongst my peers that a transcendent God must exist. Now, they don't use that terminology. They don't talk about, hey, we proved God exists. We have proved an agent beyond space and time who creates everything must exist. But last time I checked, that is the dictionary definition of the God of the Bible. But where there's still some pushback is this God that we've now established must exist. Is God personal? And did he design the universe and the earth for the redemption of billions of human beings? Now, I got a question for all of you as we move into this question. Is God merely transcendent, or is he transcendent, personal, caring, and loving? Who was the first scientist to claim that the universe is expanding? And I'll give you some suggestions. People have said it was Albert Einstein, some have said George Lemaitre, some have said Edwin Hubble. How many of you would vote for Albert Einstein? Okay. How about George Lemaitre? Probably not as well known by some of you. And how about Edwin Hubble? Oh, we got a lot of people for Edwin Hubble. Okay. The real answer is Job, followed by 5 other authors of the Bible. And you'll laugh, but this was a huge factor in my becoming a Christian. Picking up the Bible and seeing that in these 11 texts, it speaks explicitly that we live in a universe that continuously expands. No book outside of the Bible said this until the 20th century. And in terms of these 3 scientists, it was George Lemaitre that first talked about the expanding universe. He's considered the father of the Big Bang expanding universe model. But he was actually upstaged by Job and Moses. He was upstaged by Isaiah and Jeremiah and Zechariah. These were the first to speak about the expanding universe. Job 9:8, where it says, God alone expands the universe. It may not come through in some of your English translations. Most of these texts put it this way: God stretches out the heavens. But the Hebrew verb for stretch out is the verb natah, and it literally means the expansion of what's being described. Now, these texts have been so disturbing that when I debate atheist physicists on university campuses, they immediately insist that these are figures of speech. They're mere metaphors. The Bible isn't literally speaking about a continuously expanding universe. But if you look at these texts in the original language, you'll see that the verb natah is used in all three Hebrew verb forms, which means they are literally talking about a continual expansion of the universe. And that had a big impact on me in my late teens, realizing this is evidence that the Bible has the power to accurately predict future scientific discoveries and do so thousands of years in advance of what scientists have been able to discover. Now, I've actually written a whole book, The Creator and the Cosmos, on the scientific evidence we have that the Bible got it right, that we live in an expanding universe. I'm not going to take the time tonight or even this weekend to take you through that evidence, but I will show you a visual demonstration. And this is thanks to the Hubble Space Telescope. So on the left, you're seeing a part of the sky where we're looking at galaxies that are 12 billion light years away, which means it took the light 12 billion years to reach our telescope. Contrast with another part of the sky, we're looking at galaxies 2 billion light years away. So there's 10 billion years between these two images you see here. And I put them both to the same spatial scale, so you can see how over the course of those 10 billion years, the galaxies have spread apart from one another. And if I had time, I could show you dozens of other images that demonstrate that indeed as the universe expands from the cosmic creation event, it expands in a continuously near constant fashion, just like the Bible declared thousands of years ago. And now we know what aspect of the universe is most responsible for that expansion. It's something called dark energy. How many of you have heard of dark energy before? Wow, most of you have. You know, it wasn't discovered until 1999, and yet it makes up 71% of all the stuff of the universe. Isn't that interesting? That astronomers have been ignorant of the biggest component of the universe until 1999. There are reasons why. It's hard to measure. But what we discovered is that in order to have the universe expand at just the right rate to get the stars and planets that you need to make physical life possible, you have to fine-tune this dark energy to better than 1 part in 10 to the 122nd place. Or to put it another way, the fine-tuning we see in dark energy exceeds the best human design achievement by a factor of 10 to the 97 times. 10 to the 97 times. Or to put it another way, what this demonstrates is that the one that designed dark energy, compared to the very best of what we human beings have been able to achieve, demonstrates that the designer of dark energy, at a minimum, is 10 trillion times more intelligent and more knowledgeable than our best scientists. And at least that many times better funded than the US government that actually made it possible for them to build these amazing machines that they have built. And I think you get the point. We're not just talking a transcendent being, because only a personal being can manifest the attributes of intellect, power, intelligence, and creativity, and does so to a degree far beyond anything we humans are capable of achieving. And interestingly, this has been noticed, not just by astronomers like myself who are Christians, but also by astronomers who have been lifelong atheists. And 3 of these atheists wrote a research paper recently in which they wrote about this fine-tuning in dark energy. And when the paper was published, it caught the attention of another atheist, a physicist who is a senior editor for the journal, Nature, probably the most prestigious science journal in the world. And he interviewed these three, and this is what came out of the interview. That arranging the cosmos as we think it is arranged, say the team, would have required a miracle. And basically they're saying, if dark energy is real, this is what we're stuck with, which is a remarkable statement for three atheist astronomers to make. And they went on to say in the interview, an unknown agent, namely beyond space and time, intervened in the evolution that is the history of the universe for reasons of its own, which explains the title of the research paper. Their title of the research paper was Disturbing Implications of a Cosmological Constant, which is another term for dark energy. In other words, their paper was saying if dark energy is real, then we're stuck with this agent beyond space and time performing miracles for reasons of his own. And since that is so utterly disturbing, dark energy can't be real. And that's actually how they finished their paper off. This is a direct quote, the last sentence in their paper. Perhaps the only reasonable conclusion is we do not live in a world that is a universe with a true cosmological constant. But here's the irony of that paper. Within 9 months after the paper was published, astronomers developed 9 observational demonstrations that not only does dark energy exist, it is a dominant component of the universe. I don't have time tonight to go into the technical details, but that URL at the bottom will send you to short articles I've written on all 9 of these discoveries, and actually the latest update shows 25, because today we got 25 independent observational demonstrations that dark energy is real and the dominant component of the universe, which means there really is a personal God that is designing the universe for the benefit of us human beings. Now, part of our creation model, reasons to believe, is based on the principle you see in Job and the Psalms, that the more we learn about creation, the more we learn about the universe, the more evidence we will accumulate for the supernatural handiwork of God. And this is one from my book, The Creator and the Cosmos, which makes the point that indeed, as we learn more about the universe, the number of features, like dark energy, that shows this extremely high level of fine-tuning design has consistently gone up. Whereas back in 1991, we knew of 17 such features. Today, the list is now above 180, which is what motivated the agnostic astrophysicist Paul Davies to say in his book, The Impression of Design is Overwhelming. Now, he was only looking at the universe. The truth is, we see that overwhelming design at all size scales levels. We need a just right universe. We also need an exceptionally fine-tuned cluster of galaxies. We live in the only cluster of galaxies in which life is possible. Over 200 features of our Milky Way galaxy must be fine-tuned for life to be possible. I don't know about you, but it's spoiled my enjoyment for the Star Wars movies. A galaxy far, far away. Hey, we've looked far, far away. We don't see any galaxies that meet the requirements. So hopefully that doesn't spoil things for you. But we need a just right star, and now we know that every planet in our solar system plays a critical role in making advanced life possible here on Earth. So come Thanksgiving, our family is going to be thanking God for all 8 of the planets in our solar system. And of course, we need a just right Earth, and we need a just right moon. And it is such that when we look at what features we need in our Milky Way galaxy and our planetary system, we see that the evidence for supernatural intervention goes up. Matter of fact, it's going up at a rate of a factor of 1,000 times minimum per month. So we're on university campuses, we share with the skeptics. If you're not convinced today, wait 1 month and see what happens as we learn more and more about galaxies and stars. But this is what Freeman Dyson said concerning this evidence, is the more I examine the universe, the more evidence I find that the universe in some sense must have known that we were coming. Now, if you want to read more about this, we're giving away chapter 15 of this book, The Creator and the Cosmos, for free. Go to reasons.org/Ross and you will get that. And if you want the latest evidence on the design of our planet, again, you can get a free chapter by going to reasons.org/Ross. If you want the entire book, they're out there at the table. And my last few minutes before I turn things over to Fuzz, I want to give you just a little snippet of what we've learned in the last few months that gives us a much stronger case for Genesis 1, demonstrating the scientific accuracy of the entire Bible. Now, if you remember nothing else from this evening, I'm going to ask you to remember this. Genesis 1:2. The Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. It places the point of view on the surface of the earth, below the clouds, not above the clouds. Galileo made the comment that the biggest mistake you can make in Bible interpretation is to get the wrong point of view. When you run into a scientist or an engineer who says that Genesis teaches scientific nonsense, ask him what the point of view is. If you get the wrong point of view, it will be scientific nonsense. But the text says it's on the surface of the earth. And we get a confirmation of that in Job 38, where God speaks and he says, I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness. So it's explicitly telling us why it's dark on the surface of the waters before we get to creation day 1. It's not dark because God hadn't created the sun, moon, and stars. It's dark because between the sun, moon, and stars is a cloud layer that blankets the seas and keeps it dark. So on creation day 1, it says, let there be light. Notice it doesn't say that God created the light or made the light. He did that in the beginning. But creation day 1 is when the atmosphere, for the first time, is transformed from opaque to translucent. Light can now pass through. Jumping ahead to creation day 3, it says, let the land masses form. Now, I remember back in the 1950s reading texts about the history of the continents, and they basically were saying they have not changed over the entire history of the earth. In the 1960s, I had the opportunity to take a course from 2 of the 3 geophysicists that launched the discipline of plate tectonics. And they said because of plate tectonics, we see an increase in the continental landmass coverage. Now, the Bible tells us that the earth begins with no continents at all. But on creation day 3, we see these continents come into being. Okay, year 2000, geophysicists for the first time come up with a fairly detailed history of the buildup of the continental land masses. And notice you get the most aggressive growth when the earth is a little bit less than 1/3 of its present age, just exactly where Genesis puts it. But a paper was published in late March of this year, and this is now the story. What I want you to notice is the more we learn about science, the greater consistency we get with the biblical text. The more we learn, the more evidence we get that the Bible gets it accurately with greater accuracy with respect to time. Buzz, I'm going to turn it over to you.